Happy video day, guys. Christina, Brooke here. Today we're going to be doing a Make Up Your Mind. So today's Make Up Your Mind is on a brand new release from Charlotte Tilbury. So this palette is going to release pretty soon. I've been seeing the sneak peeks for this palette. Has it been like 2 months already? Like, I feel like I've been seeing this for 2 months already online, and it has to be coming out like any day now because we've been seeing this for like 2 months. So the palette is going to be called the Instant Eye Palette Smokey Eyes Are Forever palette, and it's going to be her holiday 2021 launch. It looks just like this. So her larger eyeshadow palettes like this one are usually around $75 US. So I'm going to assume it's going to be around that price tag. So if you guys can see, there is some greens sprinkled into this palette. So of course it is catching my attention. I like those mossy kind of greens. So when I saw this, there was parts of it that really intrigued me, and then there was parts of it that really remind me of a holiday release that I already picked up from Charlotte Tilbury that I'm going to tell you it has a very similar vibe to. But in today's video, what we're doing is we're searching through my collection and we're going to try to mimic this brand new release. So if you're new to Make Up Your Mind and you have no idea what I'm doing or why I do this, the reason that I do this is every time a brand new eyeshadow palette releases, I go ahead and I kind of search for it in my collection, basically to kind of mimic the color story so I can see what it actually is going to look like. So by me seeing it swatched out on my arm, I can get an idea of whether I like the colors together. Sometimes I even play with looks, like today's look is a look that you could probably recreate if you buy this palette, because these are all colors that I found in my collection that are very, very similar. So this way I can kind of get an idea. Do I even like this color story? Do I have it a million times over? A lot of times I have realized that either I already own a palette so similar, or like I don't like the arrangement of colors. Things look so different and so much more beautiful thrown inside of a palette than sometimes when you actually see the colors swatched together. So today we're going to be looking for this one. This is a pricey little guy. I usually like these type of palettes from Charlotte though, because it's a nice way to be able to try her range without having to pay like the huge price tag on her little quads. So yeah, usually I'm excited for these releases. I don't know how excited I am about this one. If you like this kind of content, I have an entire playlist where you can see all of my videos where I do this, and if you like to be a little bit realistic with makeup and maybe not buy every single thing that you see that makes you very excited, then maybe you would want to hit subscribe, join the family, and we can discuss this stuff together. So anyways, let's go ahead, let's get into it. Lots to go over, and let's start right now. So like always in the beginning of these videos, I go ahead and show you guys the swatches. So here are the swatches, and this is how close I was able to get. Now I will say that there was some interesting colors in here. The swatches that I'm using are actually from Chic Profile. I will have her Instagram linked down below. I don't actually have brand swatches at this moment, so I just decided to just go ahead and use her swatches to try to come up with this color story, and I feel like I was able to come up with it pretty close. But based off of what I'm seeing and a few different swatches that I've looked at, this is the closest I was able to get. Now I did use a specific palette that I'm going to tell you guys I think looks very similar to it. So the first palette that I used is Starry Eyes to Hypnotize. You guys remember this beauty right here? So this release from Charlotte, I believe it was not last holiday, but the holiday before, and I really actually used this palette quite a lot, and I feel like it's kind of like the sister to this palette, but we'll get into that in a minute. Another palette that I do feel like I was able to jump into quite a lot was this one. So this is the Wild West from Urban Decay. There's a similarity to this palette in this new Charlotte Tilbury release as well. Playing with some of the tones to get like the perfect greens, I did jump into Pumpkin Spice. So this was a release from Too Faced, and I think it was last holiday's release. And finally, for some of the peachier tones, I did jump into this palette, which you will not recognize because it's actually a combination of my Viseart palettes, but the palette that I'm going into is this one down here, which is actually the Paris edit from Viseart. So that's this down here. Up here is my dark edit. So I just mix them together because I like to use them together. So anyways, those are the palettes that I jumped into. I do feel like there was a dominant palette in this video. So let's start with the first color. First color is a black, and I got it from Starry Eyes to Hypnotize. I actually like Charlotte Tilbury's black. black. I think it's a really, really nice black. It's not very overpowering, which I actually enjoy. So there's a nice black in this palette as well. Now, what I do like is it's part of her Confident Eyes section of the palette. If you guys don't know, Charlotte Tilbury typically like sections off her palettes to do different eye looks. So I kind of like that there's a black in here, right? So let's see though, because it's a very deep color to start off this palette, and let's see how the other colors play with it. So for the next color is something that's different from the Starry Eyes. What I ended up doing was jumping into this brown here. Inside of the Wild West actually pulls a little bit cooler when you swatch it. So it looks like this. Now it's reminding me a lot of the swatch that I see from Charlotte. It actually pulls a little cooler, which is interesting. So now what I do like is, I have told you guys this before, when I do smoky eyes, I usually end up transitioning with a brown. I would use a darker shade like a black. I could do a black all over the lid with a base, and then when I smoke it out with a brown tone. If you're trying to do a really deep, dark, smoky eye, brown is actually a really good color to have. So these two colors, very basic colors, but they could work together really nicely to create a confident eye look, which could be like a smoky eye. So now the next color kind of reminds me a lot of Starry Eyes to Hypnotize. Inside of this palette, this first color right here, it was like a peachy, if you guys can see, it was like a peachy tone with a little bit of like an orange in it, a little bit of a pink in it. It reminds me a lot of the swatch that I see. Now, I think that this one may be close to this, maybe even a little bit more pink. So now this little quad together can create a very nice smoky lid. Is it something like super different? Probably not. There's a lot of palettes that have something very similar to this. I don't know if in Charlotte palettes we're used to seeing like a brown and a black together that are so deep. I like this color selection because it is like your basics that, you know, it's good to have. But when we keep on going, I jumped back into Wild West. I feel like I went from Wild West to Starry Eyes to Wild West to Starry Eyes. So we kind of have a combination of like these two going. So I jumped into this color right next door. So it's more of a red toned brown. And this is a really pretty brown. Like, I have to say, it's one of my favorite colors. I've told you guys this before. It reminds me a lot of sienna inside of the Soft Glam. It's like one of those brownie oranges. I even think the Charlotte one might even have a little bit more of a brown base to it. Like, I could probably even use a little bit of the color from this one above and just add it in there just to give it a little bit more of a brown base. But it's gonna look like that. Another color that I find to be very useful because it's a color that I personally really like to use. So far the colors in this palette seem to be going in a direction of useful in my opinion. Then for the next color, this is where I went back into here. So like, this is what I was saying. I was going from Wild West back into Starry Eyes. So I jumped into this next color, Love. This is from the Love section of Starry Eyes, and it's a little bit more orange toned, and it's like a metallic with a little bit more orange base. I feel like it's gonna look so similar to this one. Like, just looking at the swatch, what I think is gonna be different is I think the new palette is just gonna have a little bit more oomph when it comes to orange. So I could jump into something. I could jump into something like this from my dark edit down here and just add a little bit more orange on top just to get the color more perfected. But I think it's gonna look very similar to this. I do think that if you swatch that new color up against the Starry Eyes, there's gonna be a slight difference in color, but maybe not that much based off these swatches. This right here could create a very nice like sunsetty eye, like very red toned, very pretty. The other color that I see, what I ended up doing was jumping into Wild West again and jumping into this because it almost looks in the swatch like it's like a gold, but it has a little bit of oranginess to it. I don't know if that's just the photograph, but looking at the palette as well, it would make a little bit of sense. Little section right here of Happy Eyes would make sense for this one to have a little bit more yellow in it, a little bit less champagne, just because it would, you know, it's very warm, just because this section here is very warm, and I can see this working really well together. So another really pretty section of colors. I think that there was a quad that came out from Charlotte not that long ago that had like a color combination like this one. Leave that one down below. I can't remember what the name was. Now the next section was the section got me most excited because I love greens, especially like musty greens. I don't like stark greens, but this reminds me of like the greens that I typically would would love to wear. So what I ended up doing was jumping into Starry Eyes. So you guys see these two greens right here. I mean, I think they look similar to the image, but what I think it is the first color is a combination of these two together. So if you mix these two together, I feel like that is going to give you a color very close to the first color swatch. Like, I don't know, I was playing with the colors and I went through different palettes and I couldn't find the exact thing until I mixed these two colors. And when I mixed them, I was kind of looking at it going, wow, you know, it's kind of like a combination of those two colors mixed. Very pretty color. Actually, I like the color. I do like the color. I think it's a very, very pretty color. It's almost like a green with a little bit of like a brown in it. It just depends on how much of each color you pick up until you get that perfect color. But I really like the color in the swatch. I think it could be a really, really pretty color. The next color is the one that I'm a little bit like, I don't know if I love this color or if I'm a little scared of it. But what I ended up doing was jumping into the pumpkin spice palette, and I jumped into this color right here called Falling For You, but it was too similar to the color above. And what I ended up doing was adding on top this really, really vibrant color called Fall Vibes, which has like a little bit of like a yellowy tone to it, because I almost feel like this color is gonna be like Charlotte Tilbury's version of a lime. Which is not going to be a real lime. It's going to be like a muted down green with a little lime base to it. Like, that's what I think it's going to look like. And I think it's going to look something similar to that, which could be very, very pretty, because I know like when she creates things, she doesn't create things that are very like in your face. They're always like the muted down, easy to wear version of it. And I think that might be what this is. So this section right here is the one that has me the most excited because I love those type of tones. The next color looks to me like it is a more cool tone, nudish color. Now, what I ended up doing was jumping into this palette right here from Wild West and jumping into the nude. Now, nude itself is too light, and it looks to me like hers might be a little deeper than this. So what I ended up doing was adding a little bit of this same brown that we keep using, which is from the same palette, this whiskey color, and just like kind of dabbing it on top until I got to like the perfect tone of nude that I felt like looks similar to her swatch. Now, I actually think that this could be pretty together. The only thing I really wish that instead of it being more of a nude base, I wish it had a little bit more pink in it. I think that could have been kind of cool. Now, there is like this color right here, but I wish that this matte right here would have been a little bit more corally and a little bit less nude. But whatever, let's keep on going. This is Charlotte's vision, not mine. I do also think that there's a chance that this one might have a little green hint to it, which could make it pretty as well and could work really, really nicely with this little threesome of colors here. So now for the last three colors, I went back and forth because I literally wanted to stay in this palette. But what I noticed was this palette seems to go a little bit more peachy orange. And I think for these last few colors, she may have gone a little bit more pinky beigey orange. So what I ended up doing was jumping into this color right up here. This is from the Paris Edit, like I told you guys in the beginning. And I think it's gonna look more like this color from the Paris Edit. It has a little bit of pink in it, but it also has a little bit of orange, a little bit of peach, but I have a feeling she went a little bit more this route than going in the typical Charlotte Pillow Talk route. I think it might be more this direction. Now this one's a little bit more of a guess just because I was playing with the swatches a few different ways and I felt like this might be the direction. So for the next one, what I did was jump into this color that's right below. It also has a little bit more pink in it than it has orange, but it has that same vibe. So I'm thinking it's gonna go like that. And that actually could create a really pretty soft lid. And the last color is a color that I think we've been seeing a lot in palettes lately, and I got it from Pumpkin Spice and it's called Whipped Cream. So it is actually a matte cream white, which I think that's pretty interesting for Charlotte, to be honest, because I don't remember seeing too many of her palettes having matte cream whites, right? Am I wrong about that? I feel like I see them, but they're usually like satiny. And this palette almost looks to me like it's a matte. That's what I'm thinking based off the swatches, and this one actually might be a little bit more skin toned. So, and this creates more of a romantic looking eye. You can use like the matte white in the center of the eye and then just kind of play on the lighter colors on the outer edge. So this is what I came up with based off of these swatches that I see, and also kind of comparing it to the palette. In this instance, I don't know if it's 100% spot on, like I said, because I don't have the brand swatches, but looking at this, it kind of reminds me of the palette. So I'm gonna go with this is pretty similar. And I believe that this is going to be a palette that not everybody is going to love the color story. I feel like it's going to be like one of the, like a Wild West, you know, like some people are going to think that this is the best thing ever, and then some people are not going to love it. Maybe even like Starry Eyes to Hypnotize, that I don't know if this was like everybody's favorite, but I actually really liked it. I felt like I can get a lot of use out of it. Looking at it as well, I think the colors play nice together. I do think that there might be a little challenge with the greens. Because there is some warmth in here, and sometimes greens with very warm colors don't look as beautiful as when you mix them with like a little bit of cooler colors. So I feel like that might be a little challenge for some people. I wish there was one matte in here that was light but had a little bit more vibrancy to it, like kind of like a corally color or something like that, just to play up these tones a little bit if you really wanted to add a little edge to them. Other than that, I feel like it's kind of like a safe palette, but it has a lot of variation. Like you can go a lot of different ways. You know, you could play with the blacks, with the browns to do a smoky eye, or you could say forget about the smoky, let's go more into like a sunset looking eye and go very orange, and you got your oranges here. You can go back into the cool tone section and say, now let's just do some green and let's deepen out my outer edge with some black or some brown, you know, or you can go very romantic and add a little bit of pink and a little white and just do something very subtle. So I do think that she overall created a bunch of different eye looks with this palette, but it might be a more sectional palette. Like you might want to actually use it in the sections, jump a little bit around, but not 100% around. Kind of like this palette was for me. Like I liked using it in the sections, but like sometimes jumping around didn't make as much sense. Like I wouldn't want to use this color here with the greens. Like it would look like using this section together worked really good, and this section together worked really good. So I think that this might be a pretty palette. I do think that I might like this one more, but I think I'm going to make up my mind and say I'm going to pick this one up because I'm very curious. I'm curious to see how different the greens are from this palette. I'm also curious to see how different these warm tones really are, because they kind of look kind of similar. Like I think like the color stories of these two are very close. I want to know how different they really are. So if you want to know my 2 cents on it, it would be that if you have this palette right here, I would wait for the reviews, and usually she launches these palettes early so that you have like VIP early access and you get to get it before everybody else. I would not jump on that if you don't have to, or if you don't want to, or if you're questioning it, just because I feel like there may be a pretty close similarity to this one. And if they are that close, I don't know, do you want to have 2 palettes that are super similar? Even though I know the colors aren't going to be exactly the same, there is going to be some similarity, and it is $75. So I'm going to tell you, I'm interested in knowing how similar they are. I think I might like this palette, to be honest with you guys. I think I might like it. I think I like the color arrangement here. I just don't know if it's something that everybody is going to want to go out and buy. I think that if you never got this palette though, then it might be really cool, because I think that this might be the sister. You know, like I don't think that they're like identical twins, but they're probably like sisters. Like that's what it's looking like to me, but I don't know. That is where we're going to leave this video. What I want to know from you guys now, right down below, is what do you think? Was this like the first palette that went through your mind? Did you think of this palette is Starry Eyes to Hypnotize? Is this what went through your mind when you saw this holiday release? Or was there another palette that you think looks more similar? Talk with your friends down below. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. I will be picking up the palette, so leave your notifications on. I will tell you guys how similar it is to Starry Eyes to Hypnotize, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.